Tom, and I'm Manc.
I'm Meg and I'm Yank.
And today we are looking at the British comedy classic that is Blackadder Goes Forth. Meg, you ever heard of this before?
Only what you've told me.
And for the people watching at home, what do you know before we go into this?
Well, you've told me that the same characters are there through each of the seasons, or series as you guys call them, and that they all play essentially the same lineage, I guess, of family, in terms of where their different, like their individual character comes from, but each one's technically a different person.
Yeah.
So they each have their own storyline,
yeah,
in a sense, in a different time period.
So, what have you ever seen much with historical comedy done before?
Not really, I suppose.
No, it is a weird one, Blackadder. It's probably the only historical based comedy that I've ever seen, unless, you know, if you know of another one, in the comments please, because I can't think of any others. But like you say, yeah, so for anyone who's never seen Blackadder before, and if you've not, why not? But if you've never seen Blackadder before, there are 4 series, and each series takes part in a different period of history. And all the same characters are there, but like Meg was saying, they are essentially descendants of one another. But they essentially play it's the same actor playing the same character. And we're starting with Blackadder Goes Forth, which is the 4th and final series. I bet you're confused as to why we're doing that.
I mean, I'm assuming one's better than the other, I'm guessing. That's the only thing I can come up with.
Essentially, yes, that is why we're doing it. Blackadder Goes Forth, in my opinion, is the best one. In a lot of people's opinions, I think it is the best one.
Okay.
I also did it as well to ease you in as well, because I think it is the only historical time period that you will have any sort of base knowledge of, and I'm sorry if that came
Fair
across.
Fair enough.
Sorry if that's condescending. I do.
No,
but it's just
for anyone else, in case you weren't aware, I'm not exactly a history buff. Far from it. You can blame my American education on that.
Well, that's the thing, because a lot of it is based in British history. So you have, like, the idea of the War of the Roses is the first one. You have...
To be fair, we did learn about that. I just didn't pay attention.
There's also the Tudor period. Specifically...
We learned about that too, but I didn't pay attention. I feel like there's a reoccurring theme here.
Yeah, Series 2 is specifically set during the reign of Elizabeth I. And then the Blackadder III is in the Georgian period.
That I know nothing about.
So, do you know when the 4th one is? Have I told you this?
I don't think so.
It is set in the trenches of the First World War.
Oh, okay.
So, not really the place for comedy.
That's exactly what I was about to say. I was going to say that hardly seems like a place for comedy, but alright.
We are actually going to watch the entire series, which seems like a mean feat, but there's actually only 6 episodes at half an hour each. So it's only really 3 hours worth of viewing.
That's not bad.
No.
It's like a movie.
Yeah. So with the magic of film editing, we're going to go away and watch this, and we're going to come right back and you're going to hear our reaction. Okay, so I think there's going to be a few people that you have heard of before or seen before. The main character is Rowan Atkinson. Have you heard of him?
No, I don't think so.
Have you seen Mr. Bean?
No, I haven't actually seen that.
Okay.
I've heard of it. Apparently it's supposed to be quite funny from what people have told me, but...
I suppose the only one other person that I think you will definitely have heard of is one Mr. Hugh Laurie.
Yes! I like him. To be 100% honest, I genuinely forgot he was British for so long. Like, I remember him in some 101 Dalmatians as a kid, but then, like, I obviously hadn't seen that movie in so long, so then I went and watched House as an adult, and I was like, oh, he's American. And then I was actually babysitting some kids, and 101 Dalmatians came out. I was like, oh my god, that's right. He is British.
Yeah, he plays a very...
He does.
He plays a very posh boy in Blackadder.
Interesting.
Have you heard of... I don't know how famous he's in America. Have you heard of Stephen Fry?
I've heard the name. I can't picture the face, but I know I've heard the name for a fact, yeah.
Stephen Fry is very good friends with Hugh Laurie. They did do their own comedy show together.
Okay.
But he's more famous now for hosting a show called QI, which was like a comedy panel show, which was based around It was basically a play on IQ. It's meant to be about random trivia.
Oh, okay.
And he's known as being like a very intellectual comedian. He's done a lot of stuff around mental health as well. He's outwardly talked about his bipolar disorder that he suffers with. So he's done a lot of work with that as well. So real sort of does that.
Assuming that's not brought into the show though, correct?
No, not in Blackadder. No, you're not going to see that. But yeah, last thing just before we go watch is that have you got any expectations of the show based on what we already know? So first of all, the name Blackadder. What do you expect that to be like?
Well, you and I talked about that, and apparently it's a snake native to England. So just based off the name alone, I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that the guy is kind of sneaky, slick, conniving, not a very nice person, slightly venomous.
Well, I think you've got that one pretty spot on. Do you know anything about what's your impressions of the First World War trenches? What sort of things do you think they're going to address? Do you know?
Well, okay, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how I could bring that into a comedy sketch, I guess, because all I can think of is horrible things, basically. It's like the tragedy of war.
Okay, well, what sort of horrible things do you associate specifically with the World War I trenches? Did you learn much about this when you were at school?
Well, yeah, it was like bombing, but like I went to that, what's the museum, the one down?
Oh, the Imperial War Museum in Manchester.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I went to that, and they had all that stuff in the cases and things. Like, obviously, that wasn't just World War I. It was, like, all different wars. Mm-hmm. But, no, it was, like, things that they found, like, things in trenches and, like, on people and, like, things like that. And it was just, like, I don't know, the Dear John letters, things like that, I guess. Pictures of their ladies in little lockets. Cliche things, I guess. Nothing happy.
Are you interested to see how they're going to turn this into a comedy?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out, is how you could possibly turn something so, I don't know, terrifying and tragic into something humorous. So I'm intrigued.
Well, shall we go find out?
Yes, let's.
Right. Well, we're going to be gone for a while, but through the magic of editing, you'll see it in a second. Let's go watch some Blackadder.
Hey.
And we're back. It's been just a few seconds that we've been away since we filmed the last bit. I appear to have grown a beard in that time, and we may or may not be wearing the same clothes. I haven't checked. I think I was wearing this shirt. Was I? Who knows?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. Okay, so it's been a hot minute since we came here last, hasn't it? We've had a few delays. We won't say what, but we have been delayed. But Meg, we have over the course of this last week been slowly chipping away, haven't we? So, overall thoughts and feelings on Blackadder Goes Forth. Just a general sort of thoughts on it.
It wasn't my sense of humor, as you know. However, that being said, I thought it was interesting they took such like a serious point in history, like the middle of a war, people right down in the trenches, and then added some humor to it. Definitely wasn't quite exactly what I was expecting. I mean, you said it was historical and that it was, meant to be a comedy, and I was intrigued, but it was definitely different than what I expected.
So what I was thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, I was thinking that a lot of the humour that came from like the war and like the British involvement in the war, that's just part of the collective British zeitgeist, were things that you just didn't quite click with you.
Yeah, I'm far from a history buff, as you know, and I mean, I would love to blame that solely on American education because we are known for lack of historical knowledge, but truthfully, part of that's just me. History was never my subject. It wasn't my favorite. So I think it never really sunk in with me.
There was a big thing about that I was intending to talk about, but we will get to it at the end.
Yeah, so not my sense of humor, but it reminded me a lot of the show that my dad used to watch, actually, which, truthfully, I either played on my phone or left the room because it was never really my favorite show. But it reminds me a lot of that show, MASH. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that. It's about the Korean War, though. My dad always liked that show.
Yeah, we have I would say a lot of people in the UK will have at least heard of MASH.
Okay.
I have heard of it. I've never really sat down and watched it, so I can't comment.
I would say don't bother, but again, not my sense of humor. So.
Okay, so we were going to go through this episode by episode, and what we thought of them and what you liked about it. Because I know you said it's not quite your humour, but I'm pretty sure I heard you laughing at quite a few things. So I think there's some stuff to unpack here, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I mean, there were some funny bits. So I suppose episode 1 was called Captain Cook, which made me giggle a little.
Why?
I don't know, it just reminded me of Captain Hook, as childish as that sounds.
Okay.
I suppose it was also an introduction to the characters, and I did not realize that Hugh Laurie from House was in it.
Yeah.
And I always forget, that, I mean, like, I know he's British, obviously, I'm not a complete idiot, but genuinely I forgot that for many years, like a while back, until I rewatched 101 Dalmatians. I was like, oh my god, he's British, because he does the American accent so convincingly. So seeing him in this with a completely different British accent was just quite interesting.
I found it hilarious thinking about the character of House, who is this very, one, American, like you say, but
pessimistic.
Also, incredibly pessimistic, dry, cynical, sarcastic character. And the character of George could not be further from that.
Yeah.
Great stotter! You mean the moment's finally arrived for us to give Harry Hunn a darn good British-style thrashing, 6 of the best, trousers down?
Are we all going to get killed? Yes.
Yeah, I think that's why it hit me. I was like, wow, this is so different.
How would you describe George?
I mean, you say ignorance is bliss. I think he's just living in blissful stupidity, basically. I mean...
Do you know what sort of person he's there to represent, in a way, in terms of society, you know?
Oh, society in general, or just like the person down in the trenches? Because I feel like he's the person trying to keep everyone happy, keep everyone going. Like he's the bright spot of sunshine.
And what sort of class do you think he came from?
Well, he seemed to have people that were higher up in the military that he knew.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to say higher class, truthfully.
Yeah. So he talked about how he went to a public school, which is weird Britishism. Because for anyone watching who isn't British, public school in Britain does not mean a public school. It in fact means a private school. I mean, go figure. I'm not entirely sure why. It's deliberately confusing, I imagine.
Yeah, it was very confusing, the fact that public school actually means private, because for public, for us, it's available to the public free of charge. It's just meant for everyone.
So I know I can see on your notes here you've got something written down, a particularly funny line from George that you liked.
There are funny little row your boat. Yeah, song. That one made me laugh.
Row, row, row your punt gently down the stream. Belts off, trousers down, isn't life a scream?
So one of my other favorite lines, I think, in that episode, which was from Blackadder, was a cluster of colorblind hedgehogs in a bag. Just made me laugh.
Right, so this episode really was there to introduce the characters. I think of all the episodes they do, this is the least memorable in terms of not a great deal happens in the story, but it does introduce the characters.
It serves a purpose.
So before we move on, let's have a go at looking at some of these other characters. Now, we've already discussed George. Mm-hmm. What sort of person is Blackadder?
Very sneaky, very conniving. He made it his constant goal from episode 1 all the way through the end, I suppose, of getting out of the trenches alive, not finishing the war, just getting out. So, and he would do anything possible to make that mission happen.
And what about Baldric?
I'm trying to figure out a nice way to put this. Dumb as a box of rocks is the best I can come up with.
Yeah.
The sad part was that you felt bad for him because they were all just so mean to him. Yeah. And it was like, you know, he's just dumb. He can't help it. Just let him be. Instead they tortured the poor guy.
And on Out of the Trenches there are another 2 characters. So there is, of course, Captain Darling.
I liked that one. He made me laugh.
Why did Captain Darling make you laugh?
He didn't make me laugh, actually. It was the people who, like, always talked to him and always came off like it was, like, a term of endearment, you know, where you're speaking to someone, you're like, oh, darling, I love you. Like, except it was, like, they'd phrase sentences in such a way that his name would come off almost like a term of endearment for somebody you're, like, dating or care about, you know.
Darling.
Yes, sir? I don't know, sir.
Well, don't butt in. I want to make you happy, darling.
Well, that's very kind of you, sir.
Will you kindly stop interrupting? If you don't listen, how can you tell me what you think? I want to make you happy, darling. I want to build a nest for your 10 tiny toes. I want to cover every inch of your gorgeous body in pepper and then sneeze all over you.
Really, sir? I must protest.
So, you know, married to whatever.
Yeah.
It just, that's what made me laugh.
And lastly, of course, there's General Melchett.
Yeah, I feel like he is the epitome of the upper class ruling, doesn't really give a crap about anyone below him. It's just about his position, his ranking, and keeping his status as is.
Mm-hmm. So, episode 1 was really not... It was just about them sketching some German positions. It was about introducing the characters. It was from episode 2 that we actually started getting into some actual proper storylines. And I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think some of these is where you started to like it a bit more, because it was less about the war and more about these absurd situations.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, as illogical as they were, I suppose. I suppose that is what was meant to bring in humor, I guess, is because it wasn't supposed to be completely realistic. But
so we had episode 2, which is Corporal Punishment.
Yes.
Did you notice, actually, by the way, just looking at your sheet here, that with the exception of the final episode, all of them are named after military rankings?
I did notice that, yeah. I've got...
So,
we'll go through each, I suppose.
2, Corporal Punishment. And this is the one where Blackadder shoots a pigeon. Why does he shoot a pigeon?
Well, so, firstly, the pigeon comes and the pigeon's telling them they have to, what was it, like, go into no man's land or whatever?
The pigeon came down and spoke to him.
Yes, the pigeon's like, you know, like an angel from God. No, the pigeon came with a message. It was a carrier pigeon.
Yeah.
It came with a little message, and it's saying that they have to go out into no man's land. So Blackadder's smart idea is that, you know, we're going to shoot the pigeon and claim that it never came. So instead they roast the pigeon, and he eats the pigeon. And then it turns out there was also a note, I guess, with the pigeon also saying that apparently it's a capital crime or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, to shoot a pigeon.
Yeah.
It's considered a court-martial offense. So he shot the pigeon, and the whole thing is just hiding, basically, the fact that he ate this pigeon. But then it turns out that it's General Melchett's pigeon.
Yes.
And he took it very personally because he raised it from, what, the time it was like an egg or
from
something?
Birth, yeah.
Yeah, from birth.
Do you remember the pigeon's name?
Oh, gosh. No, I just forgot.
It is Speckled Jim.
There we go, Speckled Jim. I know it was like speckled or spotted. I forgot which. Yeah.
Okay, and so then they have he gets caught out and they have a trial.
Yes, the pigeon murderer trial.
What did you think of this?
Definitely made me laugh. It was kind of ridiculous that they had a full-on court-martial offense, like interrogation-style courtroom thing over a pigeon being shot.
And what about General Melchett as a judge?
He took it very personally, although the wig made me laugh.
What do you think it shows, like, in terms of his, about the character that I always find it funny? It's like, so he gets up on the stand, doesn't he? And he asks, so he's brought up as a witness, and he is inconsolable, and he is shouting and screaming and
heartbroken over this pigeon.
And then he goes and sits back down. And he's like, right, okay, and he's just like, it's clearly.
And for sentencing,
yeah.
General, did you own a lovely, plump, speckly pigeon called Speckled Jim, which you hand-reared from a chick, and which was your only childhood friend?
Yes, I did.
And did Captain Blackadder shoot the aforementioned pigeon?
Yes, he did.
Can you see Captain Blackadder anywhere in this courtroom?
That's him! That's the man! Ah!
No more questions, sir.
Splendid, excellent, first class. That's the way, come on.
Yeah, it's clearly he can switch these emotions on and off, can't you? Like,
yeah. But then the firing squad at the end of it laughs.
Yeah, okay, I was just coming to that. Go on, explain the firing squad.
That made me laugh. So obviously he's found guilty, you know, so they send him down there to, you know, basically, I guess, I don't know, his little jail cell, basically, until he's going to go out to the firing squad the next morning.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, there's a knock on the door. In comes the firing squad. These guys are just, like, happy-go-lucky. They're, like, like, inspecting him, trying to figure out where the best place to shoot is. It's hysterical. And then he makes some comment, and Blackadder does to the firing squad, and they go, well, we aim to please.
Well, sir, we aim to please. Just a little firing squad joke there, sir.
I was like, oh, God. Funny firing humor.
Yeah. I did like all the firing squad puns that they had.
Yeah, they had quite a few.
So, George happens to be Blackadder's lawyer, which of course doesn't go well. And Blackadder wanted another lawyer who apparently was so successful that he got Oscar Wilde sent down for being gay, despite the fact that in Blackadder's world, in his, Oscar Wilde is actually meant to be an incredibly butch womanizer. And this idea of us having him as being effeminate is down to this lawyer being so good.
Yeah.
Which was kind of
that
funny.
That kind of made me laugh, yeah.
And you wanted to bring up George's assessment of...
Yeah, so my favourite quote of this episode was, and you have to realise I'm a huge dog lover, to put it simply, guilty as a puppy sitting next to a pile of poo. That one made me laugh. I think that was my favourite quote through the entire episode. Yeah. That and the we aim to please.
So, yeah, eventually the field marshal hears of what has gone on and he gets Blackadder off and he gets away with it once more. Next one is Major Star. So basically, the premise of this episode is based around, it's instigated by the Russian Revolution. The Russian Revolution has happened and the top brass in the British military are worried about stirrings in the British public and the British soldiers. So they decide they're going to solve this by putting on a variety show. And Blackadder hears that despite the fact he finds it all garbage and rubbish, he also finds out that if he does successfully put on a show, that means he'll get to leave the trenches. So suddenly he's very much interested in this sort of stuff.
Yes, he is. George, at the beginning of the episode, was very, very excited by the Charlie Chaplin films, which make me laugh because they're very much American. Filming all of that. Anyway, but yeah, Blackadder's very against them. But when, General Melchett comes around and starts listing off, after he tells Blackadder that, whoever gets the part can leave the trenches, Blackadder suddenly does a, 180 on his views on these, and it's just... Oh, I love Charlie Chaplin. He's great. And just, I don't know, really makes me laugh, I guess. Just turn quite around just to get out of the trenches. Yeah. Say anything.
So they put on the show and...
yes, and at first George is dressed up as a female. Mm-hmm. Apparently very convincingly stole the hearts of everyone in the audience, including General Melchett. Super awkward. Did not realize it's cross-dresser, apparently. Mm-hmm. Definitely thought, apparently, that Georgina, as she went by in her female form, was very much a woman, apparently. Despite the fact that I feel like us, as the audience, could very much tell it was not a woman.
It was just Hugh Laurie in a dress.
It was Hugh Laurie dressed in a wig.
I was kind of worried going into this episode that it was going to show its age, and we were going to look at that with all things like trans issues these days, and I was going to look at it and go, I didn't think it's as aged as poorly as it was. I don't think it was ever mocking...
It wasn't mocking trans or gay or anything, no.
Yeah.
I think there was another bit in a different episode, which we'll bring up later.
Yeah.
I suppose, where I had some feelings on subjects along those lines.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think this hit it badly. It made me laugh when George came back to the trenches, though, after his date with General Melchett, and he was just, a little girl in love type of thing. It was it was just a magical evening, and, it's just, I don't know, it made me laugh.
So ultimately things get a bit more complicated when you find out that General Melcher proposed to Georgina, and Georgina couldn't help herself but say yes.
Yes, as she phrased it, the candles, the music, the huge mustache.
Oh, thank God the horny old blighter didn't ask you to marry him.
You did?
Well, how did you get out of that one?
Well, to be honest, sir, I'm not absolutely certain that I did.
What?
Well, you can't understand what it was like, sir. You know, the candles, the music, the huge moustache. I don't know what came over me.
That was pretty funny, I think. So, yeah, so then they have to say that Georgina went out to no man's land, after Blackadder has to go and break this to General Melchett, so that way they don't realize it's actually George, so he has to go and say, Georgina ran out into no man's land and was blown to bits. There's nothing left of her. General Melchett's like, oh God, and then moves straight on. No heartbreak, no nothing. So, new objective is to find a new star of the show.
Yes, and then they realise that there is an actual woman in their midst, isn't there?
Yes, it's Bob.
Mm-hmm.
What is she, a driver?
Yeah, she's the driver. She is a woman who wanted to sign up to the military and be like her brothers, but had to pretend to be a man. But a bit like Georgina was a bit unconvincing, so is Bob as a man is a bit unconvincing. And it's amusing that only Blackadder is the only one who can see.
Yeah, it's just funny, I guess, yeah, because General Melchett was so convinced that it was, I guess, a man, to the point where, they brought her in for the variety show. She ends up being the new star. And then at the end, General Melchett accuses Blackadder of having a man in drag as the head of the show when it was actually Bob, who turns out was like an amazing singer, just like gorgeous, adorable, very much a woman.
So, yeah, no more variety show. Let's move on quickly. We've got the next one, which was Private Plane, where they join the Air Force, the 20-minuters. Personally, this is one of my favourite episodes of the entire series. I absolutely love this one. The main reason being is the presence of Rick Mayall as Lord Flashheart is
you
so
seem to
good.
like him, didn't you?
Oh, he's so funny. He's so funny. I was heartbroken when Rick Mayall died. I was really sad at that. And
I know what else he's in.
He's in a lot.
You said he's big, but
he was in a lot of other British comedies. We might cover Bottom one day. Blackadder hears that if you join the Air Force, you have got a 5-month training program.
Yes.
And he thinks, well, that's 5 months out of the war, so he's going to go for it.
Well, that, and also previously, before they found out about the 5-month thing, they were told that 20-minuters was the average time new pilots spend in the air, meaning they spent 20 minutes in the air and then they're out of the war. They're over and done with.
Yeah.
That's it. That was why he went into it, was because, I can spend 20 minutes in a plane and just, be out of the war. I'm cool with that.
I'm not sure if it meant out of the war or if it meant
or
just
per day.
Or just like per
whatever. 20 minutes in risk is, far from.
And so, they join. And so, basically, before we get into this, let's look at Lord Flashheart. What sort of character is Lord Flashheart?
Oh, gosh. Ladies' man, to put it simply, I suppose. Yes. Always talking about getting those women. Super flashy, shoves it in other guys' faces, I want to say, type of guy, very full of himself.
What was his favourite word? Kept shouting woof.
Yes, his woof thing, yeah.
Hi, Flashheart here. Yeah. Cancel the state funeral, tell the king to stop blubbing. Flash is not dead. I simply ran out of juice. Yeah, and before all the girls start saying, what's the point living anymore, I'm talking about petrol. Woof, woof! Yeah, I dumped the kite on the proles, so send a car. General Melchett's driver should do. She hangs around with a big knob, so she'll be used to a fella like me. Woof, woof!
Yeah, it was very, I don't want to say macho, but I felt like that was the impression he was trying to give across. Like, it was like they were trying so hard to convince you he was straight, he is straight.
Yeah.
apparently through the episode he was, so...
Yeah. He
gets Bob at the end, so,
Yeah, we said last episode that only Blackadder could see that Bob was a woman, but it seemed that Lord Flashheart saw it too.
Yes.
So, yeah, they join the Air Force, and it turns out Lord Flashheart has done away with the 5-month training program, and they're going to be up there soon. And we also reveal the real reason they're called the 20-minuters, which was what?
Their average life expectancy of a new pilot is 20 minutes. It's got nothing to do with how many minutes they spend in the air, it's how many minutes they spend alive after they get in that plane in the air.
So I guess it is how long they spend in the air.
Yeah, but the first option implied they were getting a second chance. But, I think his intro, when he gets up there and gives the spiel right at the beginning of, the training, he uses this one quote that's, "Get inside her 5 times a day, take her to heaven and back." Of course, he's talking about the plane, but, the nice, double meaning there, kind of.
All right, men, let's do it! The first thing to remember is, always treat your kite like you treat your woman.
How do you mean, sir? Do you mean take her home at the weekend to meet your mother?
No, I mean get inside her 5 times a day and take her to heaven and back.
He does say you treat your plane like you treat your woman.
Yeah.
That was his line.
Yes, that was what it was, and then it followed with a quote I liked.
So they get up there. Blackadder and Baldric get shot down and end up in a German prison. And we meet the Baron at that point.
Yes.
Who says they're going to suffer a fate worse than death. What is that fate worse than death? Do you remember?
I forgot.
He says that they're going to have to go to a German convent where they teach the young nuns home economics.
Yeah. He goes, oh, okay, that's not so bad. So Blackadder's new thing is he's just gonna, pretend to be miserable and accept the punishments. That way, again, gets out of the trenches. But then, to his unfortunate effect, George shows up with Flashheart to rescue the two of them from their prison cell.
Yeah. So whilst they're in the prison, the Baron is talking with Blackadder, who is teaching him some English humour, which I feel that it's really struck a chord with you.
Yeah, there was one quote that made me laugh really hard that he uses. So he talks about toilets, basically, and how they're the basis of an entire culture for... He's saying this to Blackadder, of course.
How lucky you English are to find the toilet so amusing! For us, it is a mundane and functional item. For you, it's the basis of an entire culture.
For you guys, meaning the Brits. And to which that definitely made me laugh, because I very much have to agree. There is a huge sense of humor around here, around toilets and dicks, specifically.
I mean, what's wrong with us?
I mean, I don't know how to answer that, but I can tell you that I've never seen a country so obsessed with toilets and dicks, honestly. It's crazy. I never realized there's just an endless number of ways to name a type of penis and describe it and refer to a person, things, whatever. All in reference to dicks and toilets. Makes me think you guys might need to go out more.
There's something fundamentally wrong with us as a culture.
I mean, we have all sorts of problems in my country, so who am I to talk?
But no, toilets and dicks, very funny things. And as they make a lot of jokes out of them in Blackadder.
But in reference to the toilet humor, I mean, you make fun of me for one thing all the time. So basically, with my job currently, I work 5 days a week. But if you have a day off during the week, when you're working a Saturday, for us they call it our loo day, and Tom likes to make fun of it and call it my day in the loo, meaning I'm spending the entire day in the toilet.
You see, Meg has some serious digestion issues and sometimes needs to take days off during the week, which she spends all day on the toilet, hence a loo day.
Yes, it's got nothing to do with it being assigned. Hey, I'll take it, man, okay? In the US, I would have had to work all 5 days and a Saturday, so I will happily take a day off during the week if it means I gotta work Saturday, that's fine.
So, right at the end of the episode, I don't know, you heard me laugh at this. This is, for me, honestly, one of the funniest things in this entire show is the bit where the Baron is giving that speech, and it's like the serious, like very monumental speech about the two. So the idea is that the two of them, the Baron and Lord Flashheart, they are like the heroes of both sides. They are like these two giants of both sides, and he is pacing back and forth, and he's talking about what an epic showdown this was, and how they are these two giants, and what an amazing thing it is that now they're facing off, face to face. And Indiana Jones style, Flashheart just gets his gun and shoots him dead.
It's like, okay, let's go. Like,
And the Lord Flashheart, this is indeed an honor. Finally, the two greatest gentlemen flyers in the world meet. Two men of honor who are jousted together in the cloud-strewn glory of the skies, are face to face at last. How often I have rehearsed this moment of destiny in my dreams. The valor we to encapsulate. The unspoken nobility of our comradeship.
I just find that hilarious. It's really funny. Just the idea that if one person saw this as such an epic showdown and Flashheart didn't care at all.
yeah, he was basically like, yeah, I've got no time for this. I got ladies I gotta sleep with. Let's go.
Okay, so episode 5 we go on to next is General Hospital, and it's a hunt for a German spy in the hospital.
Yes, it is. So there is a tragic accident at the beginning, and George is injured. So he's in the hospital, getting healed up. Mm-hmm. And apparently General Melchett hears word that there is a spy in the hospital.
Do you remember?
A German spy.
Do you remember which bit of information Blackadder has that really panics the General?
No.
It was the bit where he's talking about the battle plans, and Blackadder just says, is it to march 10,000 men out of the trenches and have them slowly march towards the enemy while they get gunned down by machine gun fire? And he goes, how did you know?
Yeah, the idea being that there was no plans and that was the plan, basically.
So, yeah, the spy. So we turn into a bit of a spy thriller this episode.
Yes, we do, but I think the name of the operation to find said spy made me laugh also. It was Operation Winkle, because we're going to winkle out the spies.
More dick references as well. Yes, so he sends someone to spy on the spy.
Yes,
Captain Darling gets sent, doesn't he?
Well, first he sends Blackadder. So Blackadder's job is to do it, but then Darling convinces him, what if Blackadder's not going to be able to, find it? Maybe you should send somebody in undercover. And he goes, you know what, Darling? I think you're right. But you're going to need a convincing wound. And so before Darling can, start making suggestions or, fake wrap up his foot, General Melchett's solution is, we're going to just shoot you in the foot. So he just takes out his gun and goes, BAM!
Yes, why not? Sounds rather fun. You'll have to go undercover.
Oh, definitely, sir.
And you'll need some kind of wound, convincing wound.
Naturally, sir.
Yes. That looks quite convincing.
He's like, okay, off to the hospital you go. Problem solved.
Yeah, so Blackadder begins his investigation.
Yes.
He ends up getting pretty sexy with a nurse, doesn't he?
Yes. To me, I kind of knew as soon as the nurse was talking right at the beginning of the episode, I kind of had a hint that it was her, but the idea is that there's this guy in the hospital with a German accent. Yeah, so you're supposed to believe that this guy with the German accent, of course, is the actual German spy, that Blackadder's just playing dumb to waste time and stay out of the trenches. But I kind of had an inkling from the beginning that it wasn't this guy.
Yeah.
That it was somebody else. But, their assumption is the guy has a German accent, so he must be a German spy. Mm-hmm. Actually, he's a British spy who was working in Germany and therefore adapted the German accent, hadn't lost it since he came back.
And who does he end up accusing?
So he ends up accusing the nurse, which again, I kind of thought so from the beginning because she seemed very interested in George's letters, and right from the start they said that she helps George translate his letters to his uncle in Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you don't find out he's in Germany till the end. That's the twist of the episode, isn't it?
Well, he said that she helped him translate the letters, though.
Yeah.
They did say that part. They
Yeah.
didn't say he was in Germany, but they think they said into German, didn't
Yeah.
they? So, I mean, I kind of assumed. But
So what is the end of the twist ending there at the end?
the twist ending is that her and Blackadder go to see General Melchett together.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they're thinking that, you know, oh, we're going to throw the German spy under the bus, so she thinks she's safe. She thinks Blackadder has no idea it's her.
Yeah.
Because, you know, she seduced him and made him think that, you know, she's Little Miss Innocent. Nope, he figured it out. So he tells General Melchett, you've caught the spy, all's good. In comes Darling with the guy with the German accent, who's actually a British spy. And then Melchett has to tell him that he was very wrong.
I think you may have missed the point of this episode. The nurse wasn't the spy.
The nurse was the spy.
No, they find out at the end it's that George has been writing to his uncle
I thought
in
it was
Germany.
both.
No, George has been writing to his uncle in Germany, who has been passing on the information. It's
I thought it was both of them.
No, so the idea is there is no spy. It's just that George is a moron and has been accidentally giving away state secrets in his letters.
What a holiday. Nurse Mary, a Bosch nose poker in her. Oh, well, lots of exciting stuff to put in my next letter to my Uncle Herman in Munich.
Sorry?
Those letters I've been writing in hospital to my German uncle.
New information, Blackadder?
George? Oh, yeah, well, I know there's a war on, but family is family, and old Uncle Hermie does so love to be kept abreast of what's going on. I even wrote and told him about old walrus-faced Melchett and his smelly old shirts.
Would you like me to tell this one to the General, Blackadder? Or would you enjoy that very special moment?
I'm dumb. I thought it was both. I thought it was like a combination of the
No,
two.
that's why, because she gets sent off to the firing squad and they have to run out at the end because they're going to shoot this woman who's actually done nothing wrong.
What the hell was I thinking at the end of that
I
episode?
think you've missed that one, yeah.
Was I tired when we watched that?
Maybe you
I was
were.
going to say, I don't know. The part I remember most distinctively, though, was that, again, this is in reference to what we kind of discussed in one of the earlier bits there, when we were saying that that part didn't actually age, or that one aged well. This one did not. There was a lot of very gay, homophobic jokes in this episode, I think.
Yeah.
That did not age so well.
No, I think
They were blatantly offensive.
there were a few times where I was thinking, yeah, okay, that's not good.
The whole episode, though, it was all just about, like, basically pointing out Darling was gay and making jokes at his expense, all under gay humor that was quite homophobic.
Yeah.
So
it is. So for anyone who doesn't know, it is a fairly old show. It was this series is 89, so it was released the year that both you and I were born. Mm-hmm. So it's fairly old, but
I don't think it's old enough to have that much outright homophobia in it.
If you look at there are things from the early 2000s which have such out and out homophobia.
Right.
I'm not defending it. I'm not saying that homophobic humor is fine just because it's old. But I'm just trying to put in a little bit of context. But you are right. That for a lot of shows that old, they age badly in terms of the humour. And I think this series as a whole has stood up. But you're right, in this aspect, this was the one bit where I was thinking that ain't alright anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think if it only been one or two jokes, it maybe wouldn't have been so, like, bad, but it was the whole episode, start to finish. They were just cracking terribly homophobic gay jokes, so I don't know. I think that was, not my favorite episode, I suppose. It just seemed a little offensive. But, yeah.
Okay, and lastly we come to episode 6, which is just titled Goodbye.
Bye with a lot of E's, so it's
few E's.
goodbye.
It still keeps its tone throughout the episode of being silly and humorous until a few scenes from the end. I think this is...
I think it's got it through most of the episode. It's a bit darker.
Yeah, this is a darker episode, and I think a lot of the things that have been made fun of throughout the show come home to roost in this episode.
Yeah, they kind of bring, I guess, what they were all trying to bring to light of heart, and then they comes to the realization that you can't really make fun of it anymore. It's inevitable. This is what's happening.
So throughout all these previous episodes, there have been various jokes about the ineffective nature of the British High Command. What do you think they were trying to say about the British High Command at this in the First World War?
That they had no plan. That they literally just sent men out to be slaughtered.
Yeah, that is sort of the accepted cultural narrative of the First World War, is that this trench warfare was horrific and people were just sent out to die.
And wait for death, pretty much. They said they were in the trenches for what? They said 2 years or something? So they literally sat in this trench for 2 years, waiting and waiting and waiting, trying to plot to get out, and then instead just got sent out to the inevitable death.
I think if you look at the objective historical truth of the First World War, that's not the whole truth, as in those, it was all just charging at machine guns. But sadly, that did happen, and there was a lot of death put into attacks that went nowhere. So they do the joke, don't they, where he gets the map out and he goes, "This is how much land we really took." And he goes, "What's the scale?" And he goes, 1-to-1. So it's just like a little bit.
Yeah, it's literally just like a patch of grass that they have like sitting out there. I guess it's not even grass though, is it? Really, it's just kind of dirt.
Just a patch.
Basically, there's like a pile of dirt on a table, and they're like, and he's like 1-to-1.
Yeah.
It's like, we've made so much progress.
Yeah, and this idea that I mean, do you think throughout the entire course of the show, Blackadder is meant to be seen as a coward? Because we always say about how he's trying to get out of it, but I never get the tone that you're meant to think of him as a coward.
I don't think you're meant to see him as a coward either. I don't think it's like a cowardly choice of what he's doing. I think it's more of a like fight or flight response, and his choice is he's rather flight because he just wants to live. I don't think it's a coward thing. I think it's just a survival instinct.
You get the impression that he's smarter than everyone else, don't you?
Well, yeah, I think that's kind of the point of it, though,
yeah,
isn't it?
The whole point of the Blackadder is smarter than them all, but he's not quite smart enough.
I was going to say, but he wasn't born into the privilege a lot of these people, so he's had to work his way up. So he's not up where General Melchett is and the other idiots, because he wasn't given the option. He had to work for it.
But I'm also saying he's not quite smart enough to ever see through what he's trying to do. He always seems to be foiled as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
He always backfires on him at the last minute, doesn't it? And that's where a lot of the humour comes from. But again, we get to episode 6, and that takes its darker turn. So let's just go through it, okay? So we do have some funny stuff in there as well. It's still a jokey thing.
Yeah,
but
still the jokes.
But the main point of the episode is that the final orders have come through. They are going to make the big push, and Blackadder is like, "Well, this is it. I've got to get out of it, because if I go over," because Blackadder talks about going over the top as if it is a death sentence.
Yeah.
How does, like, say, George talk about it?
George, at the start of the episode, I suppose, was talking about it in a, this is our destiny, this is what we came to do, we fought a war, we worked hard, he's still got his really positive spunk about him, and he's just really optimistic.
Gentlemen, our long wait is nearly at an end. Tomorrow morning, General Insanity Melchett invites you to a mass slaughter. We're going over the top.
Well, huzzah and hurrah! God save the King, rule Britannia, and boo sucks to Harry Hun.
Or, to put it more precisely, you're going over the top, I'm getting out of here.
What do they always keep saying about Berlin? Like, I say, we'll see you in Berlin for tea. Like,
oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, they keep acting like they're all going to meet up at the end, to have a beverage or something together.
Yeah.
And, talk about the good old times in the trenches.
Yeah, and like...
He's not realizing the inevitability of what's happening.
So they're all just going, right, let's go do this, we'll beat the Germans, and we'll all meet back up in Berlin when this war is won. Yeah. And it is this hopeless, positive naivety stemming from a lot of them, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it is. But then they also kind of reflect back, I suppose, on what the cause of the war was. And there's this one quote that kind of made me, or one bit, I guess, that kind of made me laugh. Where they
I heard that it started when a bloke called Archie Duke shot an ostrich because he was hungry.
I think you mean it started when the Archduke of Austro-Hungary got shot.
No, there was definitely an ostrich involved.
They talk about the cause of the war being a guy shot an ostrich. That definitely made me laugh. I was like, shot an ostrich, shot a bird, really?
So, I mean, it shows, like, that's from Baldric, isn't it?
Yeah,
and it just shows that a lot of these men are there fighting and dying for things that they don't
For things they have no idea what they're understanding or even what happened. They just got shoved into it.
Yeah, so Baldric hears the idea of the Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand and has taken it now to mean that an ostrich had been shot. Yeah.
He tends to do that a lot, though.
So, one of the key comedic elements of this episode is Baldric's approach to cooking and his coffee making. And you were particularly fond of this bit, weren't you? So, why don't we go through it? Baldric reminds us that they'd actually run out of proper coffee a long time ago.
Yes.
What were they now using as coffee?
So I suppose for just the coffee itself, it was dirt mixed with hot water. So... hot mud.
Yeah.
If you wanted sugar, you got his dandruff. That was what he did. Was just like shake some of his dandruff on there. So gross. And then the cream, milk in your coffee was spit. Yeah.
Do you remember the bit where he offers one to Captain Darling at the end? And what did he think he's been given?
So... basically, he asks for lots of, 2 heapings of milk or something?
Yeah.
2 helpings of milk or something in there? So you hear Baldric in the background, like hacking it off, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like wincing as we're watching this episode. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, a cappuccino! Like, as if they have one of those in the trenches. Really? Like, have you been down here before? Which just goes to show you he really hasn't. He hasn't experienced that side of the war. He's been in his cushy little, mansion, just kind of, living it up.
Yeah. And, okay, so we get to the end.
And it changes.
Yeah.
He's no longer in his cushy mansion.
And so, I think there are 3 bits we're going to talk about here. One is the famous bit that everyone knows, but there's the scene beforehand with Darling and General Melcher. And you said, I think, of all the things, you said you found this to be the saddest.
I think this was the saddest.
What happens? Go and explain through it.
Well, so Darling's obviously been sheltered through the entire episode, like all of the episodes notice.
So I'll just start you just before. I don't think we've ever really fully discussed Captain Darling, despite being the same rank as Blackadder, has been operating this entire time as sort of like the assistant to the general.
Yeah,
so he has had it. Oh, he's had a cushy desk job, essentially.
Yeah, he has been his personal assistant through the entire thing. So he's just, staying where Melcher is staying, eats what Melcher eats, lives there, enjoys things in lavish luxury.
Yeah. While
the other guys are out in the trenches. But at the end, after Melcher gives all of the orders to Blackadder and his troops, that they're going out into no man's land. They're coming out of the trenches over the top.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. So he goes back and he tells Darling, and Darling's like, oh, okay, that's great, whatever. I'm excited to leave with you. We're going to get on our way. And then he breaks it to Darling that Darling's not going with him. He's acting like he's doing a great thing, and you see Darling literally begging not to go into the trenches and over the top. He wants to stay. He wants to go in the other direction.
Yeah. And Melcher, again, is being completely ignorant and doesn't even hear what he's saying, does he?
He's so terrible because he, made this reference basically implying how Darling was like a son to him, not his favorite son, but a son nonetheless.
Yeah.
And, how, he's doing this because he cares for him, you mean so much to me, but then he's sending him out there to die.
No, sir. You're not listening, sir. I'm begging you. Please. For the sake of all the times I've helped you with your dicky bows and your dicky bladder, please, don't make
you go through the farewell debagging ceremony in the mess. No, I've spared you that too, you touchingly sentimental young booby. Look, no fuss, no bother. The driver is already here. No, not a word, Kevin. I know what you want to say. I know. Goodbye, Kevin Darling.
Goodbye, sir.
Knowingly.
But do you not think that? I think the whole point is that that's a reflection of this command structure that still, for them, sees this as this great and brave and wonderful thing to go into battle, despite the fact that they're never going to do it.
Yeah, but it's just sad, I guess, because, like, you see this guy go from this, like, you know, pompous, kind of arrogant asshole to actually begging, and it's just heartbreaking, because, you know, he knows what's coming, everyone knows what's coming, and it just, I feel like it started to take a really dark turn. So, yeah.
One thing I always liked about that is when Darling shows up in the trenches. And throughout the entire show, Blackadder and Darling have been sniping at each other and have been cruel and have been taking the piss and have been doing anything to take shots at one another. And once Blackadder realises that Darling is there with them,
in the same boat,
it stops and he just sort of accepts him as being there. And then the second bit I want to talk about is this bit where you have George.
That was sad too.
And this blind optimism that has always been there starts to fade, doesn't it, a little bit?
Yeah, he kind of mentions it at the start of the episode, how he had, a whole bunch of friends, and they all used to, what was it, like?
They used to play tiddlywinks together when they were at Oxford.
It sounded like a dirty game to me. I don't really know what it was. He had to explain it was something with,
It's like little counters and you flick them. I don't know. I don't really play tiddlywinks.
Anyway, but yeah, he's talking about these friends that he used to play with back at school, basically. That's why I thought it was like a little kid's school, not like Oxford, like grown adults. Yeah, so I guess, he's talking about all that he used to play with these friends and how they've each kind of gone off and they've all died, and it starts to hit him at the end that literally everyone who's ever played that game with has died in this war, specifically, at different points, and one by one they've been taken out, and now it's his turn.
Yeah.
And it hits him, and it's just, you see this guy go from blind optimism to, shit, this is what I'm here for, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
Really, this is brave, splendid, and noble. Sir?
Yes, Lieutenant?
I'm scared, sir.
I'm scared too, sir.
I mean, I'm the last of the tiddlywinking leapfroggers from the golden summer of 1914. I don't want to die. Really, not over keen on dying at all, sir.
And then the order comes through and they leave and they have that one final little joke. Because Blackadder has a stick with him. He says to George, "Don't forget your stick." And he goes, "Oh, thanks, sir. I wouldn't want to face a machine gun without one of these." And they get there and they have a bit of an optimistic point where they think that the war is over because the guns have stopped, and Blackadder tells them that even our command structure is not stupid enough to shell their own troops. And Baldric, for the last time, says he has a cunning plan, and he tells him, well, it'll have to wait. And the whistle goes, and they climb up, and they
go over
charge.
The edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then boom.
Yeah, and then fade to black. And you never actually see...
Fade to black and then poppies.
Yeah, you never actually see what happens to them, but it is... They're dead. They've all been killed. And, yeah, it fades to black, and then the poppies come up.
Yeah.
And I am not too big of a, to admit that gets me, and I teared up a little bit even after seeing that for the first few times.
I didn't realize that's what it was a field of, though. I suppose I didn't really know the significance actually of even the poppies until I moved over here.
Well, that is what I was going to discuss with you there, because I've seen people talk about that in like a behind the scenes bit, and they show the footage sped up as like in real time, because it's all like very stylized and slowed down, and they get rid of the sound and it's just the music playing. And they were saying how it's a wonderful bit of editing work, that last scene, because the actual shot of it looks crap. It's because they don't have the big budget to do a proper war film, so they've got this really crappy little set with things just going, and it's not proper like war sounds. But the fact that they slow it all down into slow motion and they just have the music and then it fades to the poppy fields, and it's just so wonderfully done. And I love it. I think it is so good when a comedy show can
turn into something serious.
Can have those serious, tragic moments, yeah.
I think that was probably actually, like, it ended quite sadly. I guess, truthfully, I wasn't expecting it, to be honest. I mean, like, I suppose I should have. I mean, it was the inevitability of war, I suppose, but I guess I figured since it was a comedy, it was going to end on a happier note, so I was actually kind of confused, truthfully, at the end. I was like, wait, so they actually died, I think is what I asked you.
Do you know why the poppy field is meant to be symbolic of the First World War? Do you understand what that point was?
All I know is there's something about poppies, and that's World War I. That's literally all I know.
The poppy fields are what grew in, they refer to as the Flanders Fields. So in Belgium, where a lot of these trenches were, the poppy fields are what grew back.
Oh, after the war was over?
So that shot of the poppy field was meant to be, that's how no man's land looks now.
When there's not people dying and blowing it up and stuff.
So it's meant to, poppy is a sort of a symbol of resurgence and the idea of remembrance, because of this is what happens when we have peace. When this war stops, the colour comes back and the life comes back.
Okay.
And that is why the poppy is that symbolic. And I think, and look, the poppy has got a bit of controversy around it. There's some people who don't agree with wearing it, some people don't. I'm not going to discuss that now on camera. I'll discuss it with you off camera. I'm not doing it now. I'm not getting into politics on some silly. I know I have got into politics before, but that is a particularly edgy bit that I'm not going to touch on a comedy-based podcast.
Fair enough. We'll do it later.
But I think, as a British person, that symbolism is ingrained into me. Yeah, and I think that when that scene happens, it hits me different than it hit you, because the poppy is just, again, no matter what you think of it, it is part of this culture. It is part of British culture. It's such a big, important part.
Yeah, I think that's probably why it very much went over my head, was genuinely, I didn't know the significance of it, and so I think that pretty much explained why it didn't hit me as hard.
On the signal, company will advance!
Well, I'm afraid it'll have to wait. Whatever it was, I'm sure it was better than my plan to get out of this by pretending to be mad. I mean, who would have noticed another madman around here? Good luck, everyone.
Anyway, Blackadder as a whole, sad ending aside. Well, no, not sad ending aside, because I think the sad the sad ending is very much a part of it. But as a whole, you said at first not really your cup of tea, but you did have plenty of positives to say.
Plenty of positives.
So you didn't think it was bad by any means, did you?
No, I don't think it was bad. I think it was, they had a concept. It definitely flowed through all of the episodes. The war, each character's, I suppose, ultimate main personality trait, stayed consistent.
So it
seemed alright in sense of all that. I guess it's just personally not my sense of humor.
A bit too silly, a bit too goofy, is that what you think?
Yeah, just goofy. And I'm not really a take on that type of stuff. I like a little more thought behind it. I'm not really one on the stupid humor, so to speak.
Right, well, I know some people may be sitting here getting slightly infuriated at you for saying that Blackadder is not exactly your sort of thing. If you don't like goofy humour, God help us when we get to Monty Python eventually, which we are going to have to do. But for today, Blackadder, out of 5 stars, what are you going to give it?
I guess I'll give it a 3. It wasn't amazing. I'll go to a 3.5. I'll give it a 3.5.
Oh, are we going to allow half stars? That's gonna. I know this is
fine. We'll bump it back down to 3.
This is the first time we've done a star rating on something.
Yeah.
So we're setting a precedent here. Are we going? Okay.
I don't know. I guess we didn't discuss this ranging system beforehand. So
I am going to allow a 3.5 because I want Blackadder to get a higher rating. So. But Meg says 3.5 stars for Blackadder Goes Forth. We are going to do some other comedy stuff. I think you said you were interested in doing the second series of Blackadder.
Yeah, it seemed a little more. I don't know. It seemed different, less like, because I felt like they were taking something very serious for this one and trying to turn it into something humorous.
Yeah.
And I think the other season is meant to be humorous and not have such a serious undertone. So I'm interested to see that one.
Yeah, I would say out of all of them, the fourth and the second are generally regarded as the best too.
Okay.
So we'll do the second eventually. We'll not straight away, but we'll get around to it. Okay, well that just about wraps it up for today. So we're all done with Blackadder Goes Forth. I want to say thank you for watching. Thank you for liking and sharing and subscribing down there. Go do it. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.